The clearing was quiet, the chirping of crickets the only sound as Kyung-hoon stood frozen for a moment, watching Ji-yeon in Jun-ho's arms. The sight had pierced him, unwelcome, raw, but after the initial sting, his heart settled into something deeper. But he didn't turn away. With a deep, grounding breath, Kyung-hoon swung himself off his horse. The crunch of his boots on the grass startled Jun-ho, who pulled away from Ji-yeon like he'd been caught doing something shameful. "Kyung-hoon, it's not what you think," Jun-ho said quickly, raising both hands as if to stop an accusation that hadn't come yet. "You're misunderstanding. I was just," he was upset and I. Kyung-hoon held up a hand calmly. "It's fine." His voice was low, even. "I'm not here for explanations. I just want to talk to Ji-yeon. Alone." There was a beat of silence. Jun-ho looked from Kyung-hoon to Ji-yeon, then nodded slowly. "I'll go," he said, touching Ji-yeon's shoulder gently. "Take care of yourself." Ji-yeon gave a small nod, eyes glued to the ground, not saying a word as Jun-ho walked away. Kyung-hoon waited until Jun-ho had disappeared through the trees before turning to Ji-yeon fully. His gaze softened, but there was a fire behind it too, one not born of anger, but of urgency, of care, of everything he hadn't said before. "I'm not going to ask what you were doing with Jun-ho," Kyung-hoon said. "That's not important right now. What matters is you. I came because I need to hear what's really on your mind. This isn't just about Min Seo. Something else has been disturbing you and I'm not leaving until you talk to me." Ji-yeon kept his arms wrapped tightly around himself, like they were the only thing holding him together. "There's nothing to say," he muttered, eyes still averted. Kyung-hoon took a step closer. "That's a lie, and we both know it." His tone was firm now. "If I go back to the palace like this, without you, I'm going to lose my mind. I'll snap at everyone. I'll destroy every shred of peace that place has left. And you know what? That'll be on you." Ji-yeon's head snapped up, startled, but Kyung-hoon wasn't finished. "We're married, Ji-yeon," he said, voice softening again. "That means we bear everything together. The good and the bad. Don't push me away just because it hurts. You don't get to decide I'm better off without the truth." Ji-yeon's eyes glistened. His lips trembled. I can't," he whispered. "If I tell you, you'll hate me. And things will never be the same again. I can't bear you hating me." Kyung-hoon stepped right in front of him now, gently placing his hand on Ji-yeon's shoulder. "Then let me decide how I feel," he said. "Don't steal that choice from me. We can't move forward if you're still hiding the truth. I need you to trust me. Please." There was a long silence. And then the tears came. Ji-yeon's walls broke down all at once as the dam he'd been holding back for so long gave way. His voice cracked as he took a deep breath and whispered, "You're right. It's not just about Min Seo, it's everything. It's me. Who I am. When I tell you everything, you'll regret ever loving me." Ji-yeon looked down, hands clenched at his sides. "I didn't come to the palace for the reasons you think. I was sent there, for a purpose." He looked back up, meeting Kyung-hoon's eyes. "My father is Prince Sunman. The only surviving son of late King Seongo." Kyung-hoon blinked, a cold chill washing over his face. "What?" Ji-yeon nodded slowly, pained. "King Seongo, who was killed during the revolution. The one led by your father. That king is my grandfather." Kyung-hoon looked stunned. He took a small step back, his jaw tight but his eyes filled with confusion more than anger. "My whole life," Ji-yeon continued, "was a plan. I was born a boy, but the moment I took my first breath, my father decided I wouldn't live as one. He turned me into a woman. Trained me. Groomed me. Molded me into the perfect candidate to one day become crown princess." Ji-yeon's voice cracked. "Once I became crown princess. I was to get close to the king, kill him, and steal the royal seal. With that seal, Sunman would be recognized as the rightful ruler. A heavy breath shuddered from him. I didn't want any of it. I thought, maybe I could make my own way. That's why I became the masked traitor. I was trying to earn enough to escape. But when I got caught, my father threatened me by imprisoning my 2 companions, my nanny and her nephew. He held them hostage. I told myself I would follow through, Ji-yun said quietly. That I'd do what I had to do. But then, I met you. And I fell in love with the last person I was supposed to love. His voice broke. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. You were only a means to an end, but... Ji-yun sobbed, you saw me for who I was. You loved me like no one ever has. It was difficult for me not to love you. Kyung-hoon didn't respond, just stood there, breathing heavily, eyes fixed on him. Ji-yun looked away and wiped his tears. You can hate me. I won't blame you. I've lied to you, I've deceived you. I don't deserve to get angry and jealous when you decide to marry Min Seo or any other woman. I don't even deserve to ask for your love. But if you could just forgive me. He paused, chest heaving. I'll be okay. I will leave and I will never come back. I won't let myself be a tool in my father's hands anymore. But to his surprise, Kyung-hoon's breath caught, and then tears welled up in his eyes. His voice came out thick with emotion. Ji-yun, how did you live with this? How did you hold all of this in? Ji-yun stared, stunned. How could you even bear to look at me? Kyung-hoon continued, voice breaking, knowing that I was the cause of all your suffering. Kyung-hoon stepped forward, eyes shining. You shouldn't be the one asking for forgiveness. I should. You and your father were robbed of everything. Everything that I own does not belong to me but to you and to your father. Now, I understand why you were silent this whole time. He stepped away from him. I'm ashamed to face you. Ji-yun's eyes widened. No, he said firmly, stepping toward him. No, Kyung-hoon. Power doesn't belong to those born into it. It belongs to those who deserve it. And you've earned it with your heart, not your bloodline. I never want power. If I had the chance, I would run away from it all as soon as I get the opportunity, but I only stay because I want to be with you. Not for power, not for my father but for you. They stood inches apart, breathing heavily, tears falling freely now. I am so sorry Ji-yun, Kyung-hoon whispered. I'm so sorry for everything you've gone through. And I'm grateful, so grateful you told me the truth. Ji-yun gave a soft, tearful smile. I'm glad too. If I had known you loved me like this, I would have told you everything a long time ago. I promise that I will make everything right, Kyung-hoon said. They fell into each other's arms, holding tight, their lips meeting in a kiss that was full of pain, relief, and overwhelming love. When they finally pulled apart, Kyung-hoon gently cupped Ji-yun's face. I need to talk to your father, he said. I need to face him so I can know what to do, moving forward. But Ji-yun tensed. Kyung-hoon, no. He's gone too far. He's already built up an army. He won't listen to you. He's consumed by vengeance. He won't see reason. Kyung-hoon didn't waver. Then let him say that to my face. If there's a chance, even a sliver, I can change his mind, I have to try. Not for anything else but at least for us. Ji-yun looked at him for a long moment, eyes filled with worry, then slowly nodded. All right. But I'm telling you. My father is stubborn and he won't listen to you. They climbed onto Kyung-hoon's horse, riding swiftly through the fading light, hearts pounding with uncertainty. As the horse came to a stop just outside the courtyard, the air hung heavy between them. Kyung-hoon slid down first, then reached up to help Ji-yun down gently. But there was no time for words, his eyes were already fixed on the man waiting ahead. Prince Sunman stood tall, arms crossed, eyes sharp with suspicion and tension. His posture was stiff, as if he'd been pacing before they arrived. When Kyung-hoon approached and lowered himself into a deep bow, calling him, "Your Highness," Sunman's expression faltered for the first time. He looked from Kyung-hoon to Ji-yeon, and the look in Ji-yeon's face, quiet, pained, and resolute, told him everything he needed to know. "You told him," Sunman said quietly, almost to himself. Then, his eyes hardened again. Kyung-hoon, still kneeling, dropped into a full kowtow, forehead to the ground. "Your Highness, I've come to beg for your forgiveness," Kyung-hoon said earnestly. "I had no idea what my father had done, how he took everything from you, from your family. I've spent years questioning how he came to power, trying to understand, and now I do. I swear to you, I will find a way to make him pay for what he did. I will bring your justice." Sunman scoffed sharply, his voice rising in fury. "And who are you to deliver justice to me?" Kyung-hoon slowly lifted his head, his eyes steady. "I am his son, yes. But I am not him. I am not my father." Sunman's face twisted with rage. "And yet you wear his name, live in his palace, breathe his air. You think your apology means anything to me? I don't want words, I want his corpse. I want to watch his body burn the same way he burned my family." The courtyard went still, the silence pierced only by the ragged sound of Ji-yeon's breath. Sunman turned to Ji-yeon, face flushed with betrayal. "And you? You traitor. You brought him here. After everything, you chose him over your own blood. You despicable." "Don't yell at him," Kyung-hoon snapped, stepping protectively in front of Ji-yeon. "Ji-yeon is under my protection now. You won't speak to him that way." Sunman narrowed his eyes. "Protection? You can't do anything if the truth about you two comes to light," he sneered. "He's a man, and your crown prince. If the truth about his identity gets out, it's not just disgrace, it's treason. He'll be punished, you will be dethroned or even worse." "And who made him that way?" Kyung-hoon growled. "You should be ashamed of yourself for having the gall to threaten us with something like this. You have no idea the amount of patience I'm trying to muster in order not to give you the punishment you deserve." Kyung-hoon then scoffed. "And do you think that I'm scared of people finding out?" "I don't care anymore," Kyung-hoon said fiercely. "All people do is talk as if they own others' lives. Let the truth come out. Let them all know. I'm tired of hiding him. Tired of pretending he's something he's not. Maybe once it's all out in the open, we can finally stop living in fear." Sunman stared at him, momentarily speechless. The intensity of Kyung-hoon's declaration, the raw honesty in his voice, it shook him. The prince who should have turned his back was standing firm, because of love. Kyung-hoon stepped closer. "Let me carry this burden for you. Let me right the wrongs of my family. I may not be able to give you everything you lost, but I can try to bring you justice. Even though he's my father, he will still pay for his crimes." But Sunman's face hardened once more. "You're still his son and you too must also pay. All of your family members who harbored the positions acquired from my family's screams and blood. So forgive me if I don't trust you to bring justice. You say you'll make him pay, but you won't. So I'll do what must be done." "Father, please," Ji-yeon said softly. "This isn't the way." Sunman spun on him. "Don't call me that. You ungrateful child, going against your father because of a flickering feeling called love." Ji-yeon froze. "Do you think he will spare you after finding out the truth about you? You are his biggest rival to the throne, don't you know that?" Kyung-hoon pulled Ji-yeon closer. "Don't listen to him. Don't believe a single word he says." Sunman nodded. "So this is how it is. You're dead to me, Ji-yeon," Sunman spat. "From this moment on, I have no child." The words landed like a knife to the chest. For a beat, Ji-yeon didn't respond. But then he straightened, voice quiet and cutting. That's fine. I've never had a father anyway. Sunman's face twitched, the words hitting harder than he expected. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. His hands trembled, clenching at his sides. The fury was still there, but something else too. Guilt. Shock. Maybe even a trace of regret. But he turned away, jaw set, as silence once again swallowed the courtyard. Kyung-hoon tightened his grip on Ji-yeon's hand, his voice low but unwavering as he faced Sunman. "I'm sorry, but I cannot let you tear down the kingdom in the name of revenge," he said. "If that's the path you insist on, then I'll have no choice but to stand against you." The tension in the courtyard snapped like a taut rope. "Okay, you do that. Now that everything is out in the open, be ready for what comes next." Sunman growled. Kyung-hoon didn't flinch. He reached for Ji-yeon's waist and helped him onto the black stallion waiting just beyond the gate. The ride back to the palace was quiet for a while. The wind tugged gently at their sleeves, the steady beat of the horses' hooves beneath them. Finally, Ji-yeon broke the silence. "What will you do about my father?" Kyung-hoon's voice was calm, but heavy. "Right now? Nothing. It will be hard for him to take any action considering I am aware of what he's doing, so for now, he won't be a threat." Ji-yeon looked down at his hands, fingers knotting together. Kyung-hoon continued, "That's why my father needs to abdicate. The sooner, the better. I'll make sure of it. Everything needs to end, cleanly." Ji-yeon's throat tightened, but before he could respond, Kyung-hoon added softly, "Don't worry. I won't expose your father. I know what that would do to you. I won't go against him, not unless he forces my hand. We'll wait. I believe one day, he'll come to us." Ji-yeon said nothing, wrapping his arms tight around Kyung-hoon, letting him know without words just how grateful he was. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that thickens between people who've been estranged too long. Haru stood near the window of his modest home, gazing at the fading sky, his hands clasped behind his back. Across from him, Lady Han sat stiffly, her mother Madame O beside her, eyes low, lips tight. Haru finally turned around, his voice calm but laced with disappointment. "I heard the assassins who threatened Prince Kyung-hoon and Jeolmi were found dead." Lady Han said nothing at first. Her jaw tensed. "Did you have anything to do with it?" Haru asked, watching her closely. She shook her head. "No," she said quietly. But Haru didn't believe her. He let out a long sigh and took a step closer. "You don't need to lie to me, Haein." Lady Han flinched at the sound of her real name. "You were meant for so much more," he said softly, but with weight. "I saw it the moment you were born, your star, it was radiant. But now," he paused, pain flickering in his eyes, "it's dimmed. Not because of fate, but because of what you've chosen to do. All these dark, twisted things you've done in the name of love." Lady Han looked down, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "I was against you and Jin Suk from the very beginning," Haru went on, his tone firmer now. "He was a married man. You were a palace maiden, sworn to serve the royal family. What you had with him, it wasn't love, it was obsession. It was forbidden. And yet you insisted it was your destiny." He turned his gaze to Madame O. "You abandoned me," he said flatly. "Followed her into ruin, thinking you were protecting your daughter. But look where it's brought you." His lips curled into a sad, bitter smile. "All these years, and now you come crawling back, after you've dirtied yourselves for Jin Suk. I blame myself. If I hadn't told you, you were destined for more, perhaps you wouldn't have fallen into Jin Suk's web of lies." Lady Han's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Madame O didn't speak, her silence only confirming everything Haru said. "Why?" Haru asked. "Why do you keep sacrificing yourself for him? What has he ever given you, truly? What has he ever done for you in return?" Lady Han was quiet for a moment. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Tell him," Madame O said, her voice low but firm. Lady Han turned to her mother, eyes searching hers. "Tell him," Madame O repeated. Finally, Lady Han spoke, soft, but clear. "Because of Min Seo." Haru blinked. "Min Seo," he echoed. She's my daughter," Lady Han confessed, her voice trembling. "Everything I've done, everything I continue to do, it's for her. I just wanted to protect her." The room went still. Haru's breath caught in his chest. He staggered back a step, as though the air had been knocked from his lungs. His eyes darted between them, disbelief clouding his face. "Your daughter," he whispered, as if trying to process the words again. Lady Han nodded, barely able to meet his eyes. Haru's face grew pale. He lowered himself into a chair, head bowed. "It all makes sense now," he murmured to himself. "The prophecy. I didn't understand it then. But now I do." The candle flickered on the table beside him, casting dancing shadows on the wall. And in the silence that followed, the weight of truth settled heavily between three of them, raw, painful, and irreversible. The palace gates loomed in the distance, and as the black horse galloped through, its hooves echoing on the cobbled path, the guards quickly sprang to attention. As soon as the pair dismounted and entered the palace, a quiet murmur turned into a ripple of surprise and joy. The palace servants began whispering excitedly, and a few even beamed openly. "She's back," one of them whispered to another. "Thank the heavens. Maybe now His Highness will stop taking his frustrations out on us." Ji Yun raised an eyebrow, puzzled by the warm smiles and sudden attention. "Why is everyone looking at me like that?" he murmured under his breath. Kyung-hoon cleared his throat, trying not to look too pleased. "They're relieved. You're kind of their peace treaty." Just then, Tae-jin and Min Suk appeared from around the corner, both walking briskly toward them with grins stretched ear to ear. "Finally!" Tae-jin exclaimed. "Do you know how tense this place has been without you? Kyung-hoon made everywhere really uncomfortable because you two argued." "Seriously," Min Suk added, nudging Ji-yun with a playful smile. Ji-yun laughed, cheeks reddening slightly. "I didn't know I had that much impact." "You do," Tae-jin said, folding his arms. "And now that you're back, promise us both, no more fighting. We're too young to die from stress." Kyung-hoon groaned, brushing past them. "I wasn't that bad." They both glared at him and he looked away, Kyung clearly flustered. "It was a very emotional day, okay?" Then Kyung-hoon turned to Tae-jin, regaining his composure. "We'll talk tomorrow morning. There's something important we need to go over." Tae-jin raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I'll be ready." But the cheerful moment was short-lived. Min Seo appeared just then, gliding into the courtyard like a shadow stretching under the evening light. The air shifted immediately, palpable and stiff. Ji Yun subtly took a step back. "I didn't get the chance to speak with you earlier," Min Seo said, her voice calm but pointed. Her gaze was fixed on Kyung-hoon, but her meaning brushed coldly against Ji Yun. "We are getting married. Isn't it a good news worth celebrating?" The servants around them started to retreat discreetly, sensing the tension. Kyung-hoon didn't miss a beat. "We need to talk, Min Seo. In private." Her eyes flicked to Ji Yun, and then back to him. "Of course." Kyung-hoon turned to Ji Yun gently. "Wait for me in my chambers. I won't be long." Ji Yun hesitated, searching his eyes. He nodded reassuringly. Reluctantly, he turned and walked away, the weight of unspoken tension trailing behind him. Min Seo folded her hands in front of her, chin tilted slightly. "So," she said, her voice calm but tight, "what did you want to say to me in private?" Kyung-hoon didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Let's not pretend anymore, Min Seo. We both know this marriage isn't about love. She stiffened. You think I don't know that? He stepped closer, but not with warmth. Then you should also admit the only reason you ever wanted me was to fulfill your father's ambitions. I was never a person to you, I was a crown. A ticket. But truth is, you would have been happier with Tae-jin. Her eyes flickered, a slight crack in her expression. That's not true. It is, he interrupted gently, not angry, just honest. I know you were practically celebrating when I disappeared to search for Ji-yoon. You thought the council would hand the crown prince title to Tae-jin. And if they had, you'd have been free, no more obligation to me, no more pretending. I never. Stop lying, Min-seo. Not to me, to yourself. His voice was low now, almost sad. I'm not angry. I'm just tired. Tired of pretending we don't see what's real. Her lips parted, but no words came. He kept going. You've loved Tae-jin since we were children. But I used to watch the two of you, laughing together, sharing secrets like you lived in your own world. You were happiest then, not with me. Min-seo looked down at the floor, her fingers tightening into fists. This marriage, he said, gesturing between them, is politics. A deal. And once I'm finished with what I have to do, once my part is done, we'll go our separate ways. You'll be free to live however you want. Love who you want. She looked up at him, startled. And what about you? He gave a soft, knowing smile. I don't hate you, he added. But don't let your father keep holding the reins of your life. You deserve to choose. With that, he turned and walked away, his step steady as he disappeared down the hallway, leaving Min-seo standing, eyes burning with frustration and something unspoken. When Kyung-hoon entered his chambers, Ji-yoon was seated by the window, bathed in the soft glow of a lantern. He turned when he heard the door, his face unreadable but expectant. Kyung-hoon closed the door behind him and crossed the room slowly. You want to know what we talked about? Ji-yoon nodded. Only if you want to tell me. Kyung-hoon didn't hesitate. I told her the truth. That this marriage is a formality. She never loved me, not really. She was always in love with Tae-jin. I gave her permission to let go when the time comes. Ji-yoon studied him quietly. And how did she take it? She was angry. Maybe not at me, maybe at herself. He stepped closer, his eyes softening. But that doesn't matter to me. You do. Ji-yoon stood slowly, his gaze searching Kyung-hoon's. So, what happens now? Kyung-hoon took his hand, entwining their fingers. Things are going to get harder. My father, your father, Jin Suk the court, the kingdom. Will be challenged at every turn. Your life will be at risk, but I just want to know, will you still stand with me? Ji-yoon didn't hesitate. He pulled Kyung-hoon into a hug, resting his forehead against his. As long as you love me, he whispered, I'll never leave your side. Kyung-hoon leaned in, brushing his lips softly against Ji-yoon's. Then we'll face everything together. They held each other quietly, knowing the world outside their doors was about to get more dangerous, more complicated. But for this moment, in this room, they were safe, sharing a love and a promise strong enough to stand against anything. That night Min-seo walked slowly in the courtyard, her silk robes whispering with every step. Her thoughts were a mess, tangled with Kyung-hoon's piercing words, each one echoing louder than the last. She should have gone back to her chambers. She'd meant to. But something about the chill in the air, or maybe the ache in her chest, drew her toward the familiar courtyard near Tae-jin's quarters. And there he was, sitting alone with a half-empty bottle of wine and 2 cups by his side, bathed in the glow of a hanging lantern. She paused, instinct telling her to turn away. But her feet had other plans. Tae-jin, she said softly. He looked up, surprised. Min-seo. What are you doing here? She hesitated, then pointed to the bottle. I came to ask for a drink. He blinked, confused. You want to drink? With me? Is it such a strange request? She asked, forcing a smile. Tae-jin gave a small laugh but shook his head. I don't think this is a good idea. Please. Her voice was more fragile than she meant it to be. I just don't want to be alone right now. After a pause, he sighed and slid the spare cup toward her. She poured herself a drink and sat beside him, the silence between them stretching gently at first, then comfortably. A few sips in, she spoke again. I hate this place, she muttered, swirling the wine in her cup. It's like I've always been someone else's puppet. First my father's. Now, this marriage. A crown I don't even want with a man who doesn't love me. Who loves someone else. Tae-jin glanced at her, then looked away. That sounds awful, he said. But if I'm being honest, Min-seo, a lot of that is your doing too. She tensed. Excuse me. You've always had choices. Maybe not all the ones you wanted, but you had them. You're not powerless, not unless you choose to be. She laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You've never had to pretend your whole life just to survive. You don't know what it's like to always be seen as the villain. And sometimes, it's just easier to lean into it than to fight it. Tae-jin didn't respond, but his expression softened. They drank more, the wine loosening their tongues and quieting their better judgment. The edges between them blurred, between past and present, guilt and longing. Then, Min-seo turned to him with a tilt of her head and a sad smile. Did you ever like me? She asked. Even a little. Tae-jin blinked, startled. What? You never said anything. Never made a move. But you always looked at me like you could see deep into my soul. Like you cared even when we were no longer on talking terms. You've always acted like you despised me, but I don't believe it. He didn't answer right away. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the weight of old memories. But he didn't deny it either. You're okay with me marrying your brother, she pressed, leaning closer. Tae-jin looked away. It's not my place. Min-seo's voice dropped to a whisper. Liar. Then, before he could react, she leaned in and kissed him. He froze. For a moment, his hands hovered at her arms, trying to push her back. Min-seo. But she kissed him again, deeper this time, filled with years of unsaid words and emotions twisted into something desperate. And this time, Tae-jin didn't resist. One thing led to another, their mouths moving feverishly, hands trembling as they found each other in the shadows of his chambers. All the things left unspoken spilled out in touches and sighs as the night consumed them. Far across the palace, in the quiet of his own courtyard, Haru sat alone, gazing at the stars. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees above him. He closed his eyes, a heavy silence stretching in his chest. Then he whispered into the night. It has begun. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.